Today we're going to take a look at the consecutive strings challenge presented at Topcoder. What this challenge does is it asks us to create a method that will find the longest string in a series of strings in a string array. And it's asking us to find that series of strings within a specific window number or size. So passed in to the method is that array of strings and a number for the window size. Then we create a variable called consecutive string, and this is set to a blank string at the moment, but will be updated as we cycle through the array. Then we create a start point, which is index 0 in the array, and then a stop point, which will be basically the size of the window that we're passing in. Then we test whether or not the number passed in is greater than 0. The reason we do this is we can't really look at a negative sized window. So if it's less than 0, then, or we can't look at a negative size slice. So if it's less than 0, we're going to return that string that we created at the beginning, which should be empty at this point. After that, we are going to start cycling through the array. Now what we're doing is we're going to cycle through the array using a while loop. And once the stop point of the array is equal to or less or greater than or equal to the array size, greater than the array size, then the loop will stop. Now when the loop starts, we create a temporary string that is the window of the array that's passed in, joined together. Remember, all those strings that are in the array, or all of the items in the array, are strings. And so when we join those strings together, we get one larger string. Then we check to see if temp, that temp string that we've created, is larger than the consecutive string that we have in our method. If it is, then it sets consecutive string equal to temp string. If not, it just goes to the next iteration of the while loop. Once it does that, it increases the start point of, or the starting index of our window by 1, and builds the window to the new stop point, which is start plus the new number. So again, we are just sliding the window down the array in each iteration. Once the iterations have completed, we return the longest string, which is at that point consecutive string, and that's pretty much all there is to it. So let's go ahead and run that method real fast. I'm just going to run the RSpec just to show you that it works. I suppose before that we should, because we had to build an RSpec for this one, just talk through the RSpec. Okay, so the RSpec that I've created creates values or variables for the arrays that need to be passed in. I wanted to do this so that we wouldn't have super long expectations in our tests, even though they're still a bit long, but again, this shortens that just a little bit. So I've created arrays 1 through 6. The only reason you see 6 arrays here is because several of the arrays are repeated in the tests, so I just figured we use the same number. Then I didn't know what exactly to call the tests from the tests that were pre-built for us, so I just used the most apparent description for each of the tests. So the first one is it finds the longest consecutive string from a string array. So that's what the test is supposed to do for all the tests, really. But this is just an example of that. The next one is how does it handle an empty array? So does it handle an empty array appropriately? It handles large strings in an array. So if the strings in the array are considerably long, does it handle those appropriately? It handles strings that contain numbers. So like array 4 has 3, 4, 5, 2 as a string in it, which is basically just a string of number of characters. But still, handles positive slice arguments. So those are my array arguments, the previous ones. The next arguments are my slice arguments. So does it handle a positive slice argument, which is basically what the first test does, but this is just another example of that test. The next test is, does it handle a negative slice argument? And we talked about the negative slice and how you can't have a negative size window. So does it handle that appropriately? Does it handle slice arguments of 1? So if you pass in a slice argument of 1, will it return the longest string of each of the strings? Again, a lot of these tests are repetitive, just like the first test, but we want to make sure that we see all the tests in the RSpec. The next test is, it handles slice arguments that are larger than the array size. So here you can see the window argument that's passed in is 15, but array 4 is only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words long. So what happens when you pass in a window size that's greater than the array itself? And then finally we have handles slice arguments of 0. So what happens when you have a window size of 0? If you have a window size of 0, you're not really looking at any words, so you're just going to return the consecutive string that we created at first. All right, so those are my RSpecs. And reading that last RSpec, I think I'm going to change my return statement if it's less than or equal to 0, because it's just going to bring back the string. I'm also going to say or num is greater than array.size. Okay, so again, if any of those arguments happen, it's just going to return that consecutive array without having to run through the loop, which is okay. Again, we're just saving maybe microseconds on this with that OR statement there. So again, let's go ahead and see that it works. So we'll run the RSpec. We have 9 tests, 0 failures, so we can see that each of those tests were completed and it handled each test appropriately. So again, if there are any questions or comments, please post them in the forum on TopCoder, and I will answer them as soon as possible. Thank you.